Hello, this is Matt on the Moon Lambo channel. I'm going to share with you perspective from just one chart analyst in this very latest Moon Lambo hot jam. And of course, I'll be sharing my own thoughts along the way, but you're going to like the message. It's a message of optimism, but not just for the sake of it. It's very well placed. It's very well thought through. And kind of at the heart of the message as well, a couple key things, especially if you're an XRP holder. He firmly believes that what's most probable for XRP this market cycle is that it does hit double-digit price action. And also, he argues, frankly, at this point, and these are my words here, but, if you're not happy with your position, like how much crypto that you have, but perhaps you're fearful in this moment, basically sack up, because if you want a larger positions in crypto, including XRP, this is the time to deploy whatever you've got left. Whatever your fiat currency is, whether it's dollars, whatever, this is your time, he's arguing, to deploy whatever you have left. Because otherwise, you're going to look back on this moment and wish that you had done that. And that's always how this goes. If it feels painful when you're making purchases, just as a general rule of thumb, that's a good sign. If it feels good and easy when you're making purchases, in general, that's a bad sign. Because that means the market's already gone up a lot. But if it's gone down, even if just locally, and there's enough panic out there that maybe you're part of that and you're feeling it, well, maybe take that into consideration. But before going further, I do want to be clear, I do not have a financial background of any kind. I am not offering financial advice, and you definitely should not buy or sell anything because of anything I say or write. I'm just an enthusiast who enjoys making YouTube videos about crypto-related topics, but just as a hobby, and just for fun. And the chart analyst that I'm speaking of is none other than Crypto Insight UK. He consistently does a fantastic job. He publishes a newsletter on crypto, which frequently covers XRP in depth. He posts that on a very regular basis. And I'm not going to literally read his entire newsletter to you, though you definitely should check it out and read the entire thing. I did. But what I did here is, if you can hear this, there's some dead trees up in my Moon Lambo hands right here. I printed up this latest newsletter from him, and I highlighted just a few key parts that I want to cover, and I want to share some additional thoughts on this, but his messaging is so on point. He is absolutely correct, and what you'll find from anybody that's been in the crypto space for more than 5 seconds is that they're not afraid here, and they're very optimistic for what's about to happen. In fact, literally, and I do mean this quite literally, every single chart analyst that I follow, and I tend to be selective, they all believe that even though, yes, we're almost certainly at the end of the market cycle, there are a few that disagree on that. Either way, whether we're at the very end or it goes into 2026, and there's a few that think that, just a few. Either way, the best is yet ahead. We're still going to have a full-blown alt season and euphoria. There's never been a market cycle that has ended without that, and we have not had that. And so there was a post here. I'm not going to read this whole thing, but I do like this first sentence. He said, "Over this weekend, I feel is the time to swallow your emotions and deploy whatever you've got left." Yeah, well, again, if you want to, this could be your last chance. If what he's thinking is correct, there's not going to be more time to buy, not much longer anyway. And he also cites here, as far as XRP goes, you're going to see at least $8 this market cycle, but more likely $11 plus. And he has separately, I've seen him post about this on more than one occasion, he has separately posted that he believes it's highly plausible that XRP actually peaks this market cycle somewhere between more like $20 to $30. And when the market goes and XRP gets running, it happens fast. When XRP starts going, just so you know, historically, at the end of cycle, you're probably not going to, I mean, if history rhymes with itself, you're not going to have more than 3 weeks. From the time XRP starts going to where it peaks, that'll take 3 weeks, roughly. And it could be faster. Now, it doesn't mean it can't go longer. You know, there's only been a few market cycles that XRP's been a part of because crypto's only existed for like 16 years now. I get that. But I'm just saying, if history is to rhyme with itself, which it tends to, you're not going to have much time to do what you want to do. So if you want to purchase, I get the point that he's making here. And so here's the title of his recent newsletter, his most recent one. "It's over. Sell? ? Yeah, of course, he certainly does not think that it's over here. And so let me highlight a few key parts where he says, "For the past 50 to 60 days, it has been chopping," that's Bitcoin he's talking about, has been chopping between $118,000 and $123,000, now sitting around $111,000 at the time of writing. In crypto terms, that is nothing. And by the way, I'll pause to note that this was actually published yesterday. He says, these are just fluctuations, and they are fluctuations at all-time highs. Now, folks, please let that message seep into you. What is happening right now, even though nobody knows for sure what's going to happen in the short term in the future, what you're seeing right here is normal and is not cause for panic. Then he says it is the same story with Ethereum, the second largest crypto in the space. Ethereum actually made all-time highs twice last week, yet the sentiment feels awful. We have been hovering around all-time high levels for about 20 days. Ethereum now trading around $4,400, but the mood in the space is still overwhelmingly negative. And that is exactly what I want to talk about today. So I'll pause here to point out, and I'm glad that he's spreading this message. This is absolutely in line with what I've been talking about on my channel consistently. Think about that. Ethereum, which leads us into alt season historically, it hit 2 new all-time highs last week, and I talked about it when both happened. And the market's in shambles right now emotionally. You do realize, like several months ago, Ethereum was closer to $1,400, and now it's $4,400 because it wasn't dead. Just like I said, it wasn't dead because that didn't make any goddamn sense, and here we are. Well, it's still not dead. Number go up, my friends. And then he says, my point here is that the 2 largest cryptos, and even XRP, which has been in a range for nearly 300 days, or around 280 days at this point, are all within 10 to 20% of their all-time highs, yet the market still feels awful. And that is exactly why I think the next leg up is imminent. Now, folks, that is something that a lot of analysts have been talking about, and it makes sense. When the market's fearful, that's a pretty good sign that the top's not in. We have never ended a market cycle where at the very peak, market participants are fearful. That does not happen. When you look back at the peak of the market for any cycle that's ever existed in crypto, if you look at what the sentiment was at that time, it was very positive because people didn't know it was. So then when the first dip happens, people aren't even freaking out. They're like, buy the dip, BTFD, buy the effing dip. But it doesn't come back. It'll go up a little bit, but eventually, and it takes a while, but eventually people lose options. So I'm just saying, when the price goes up dramatically and you see the first notable dip, and people aren't freaking out, you should be scared. That would be, right now is not the time to be scared. And only 10 to 20% off all-time highs if you're talking about the top 3 coins, come on, guys. Like, it's not hard to figure this stuff out, frankly. So, yeah, I'll not be surprised if indeed he's correct, and all the other analysts that say this too, that the next leg up is imminent. Yeah, you don't know if it's today, tomorrow, next week, whatever it is, couple weeks. But the point is, the key takeaway, we're living in that zone where it makes sense to believe that, yeah, we're probably about there, frankly. Pretty much right there. Let me find the next section here. I was going to try and pull it up on the screen. Oh, yeah, actually a little bit lower, I think. Equities. If you are... Where'd it go? Shoot. Well, if I can't find it this second, I might have just scrolled past it here. I was going to try and pull up the screen for anybody that's following along on a screen here. Where the hell is it? Did I just pass it here? Oh, maybe it's... Well, I'm just going to keep reading this. Sorry, guys. It might be on the screen right now, actually. But anyway, he says, if you are already fully allocated, then you have nothing to do, so do not stress. But if you are not fully allocated, dips, especially in altcoins and particularly in those that have not yet made significant moves within the top 100, are where you want to be buying. Now, that is sound advice. So I'm not telling you to buy or not buy. I don't know what's best for you. But in terms of what I actually believe, I think it makes sense to have broad exposure to the crypto asset class in coins that haven't had substantial pumps. And if they're in the top 100, those are the ones that are probably going to be safer. And there are other attributes to look at, including total value lock. There are a number of things that you can look at, but the whole market's going to move in tandem. So I don't think that necessarily most coins are going to hit new all-time highs. But if you just want to get some sort of multiplier, I mean, everything's going to run for a short period of time until suddenly it doesn't. It's going to be a very short time period, though, just to be clear, though. So if you just want some multiplier that's going to substantially ramp up your return, yeah, like that's what we're going to be looking at here. And so that's why, for me, it's always been about large caps. Because even large caps, which offer less returns, generally speaking, than small caps, because there's more money in large caps, there's so little money even in the large caps, other than Bitcoin, that you can get crazy life-changing wealth in them, including XRP. You still can. Now, that's not going to be true for XRP in the future. Eventually, you know, XRP, yeah, it'll keep going up and become worth more and more, but it'll enter that stage that Bitcoin's now in, where it's worth a couple $1 trillion, and it's going to take a lot more money thrown into it to get life-changing wealth, because the market has already decided it's a winner, and you get paid to take on risk when the rest of the world doesn't agree with that point of view yet. So in general, I think that he's absolutely correct about that. And then he says, oh yeah, right here, let me quickly remind you that equities are at all-time highs. The Dow Jones literally hit new highs this week. The Russell 2000 broke key retracement levels and is heading towards its own all-time highs. And I got to pause a note, and I keep talking about this consistently because when the Russell 2000 breaks out, that's when you get alt season. Every single time throughout history. Last week, the Russell 2000 actually did start running. It jumped up in one single day almost 4%. And so we need to see a clear break, but keep watching it. He's like, absolutely keep watching that. And yeah, I know, there's the saying, don't buy at all-time highs. That's not exactly true though. And I've broken down, I've kind of debunked that myth in the past. Yeah, it's true that eventually, fine, we'll get to the all-time high, and the closer you get, the riskier it is. I'm not saying that's not true, but what I will tell you absolutely is true, and I backed this up with tremendous data in the past, is that once an all-time high is hit, including in the stock market, that trend, it actually tends to persist. I was talking about this a long time. I remember talking about this like a year and a half ago. There were fears like, is it going to keep running? Is the market going to keep going? And I told you, like, based on historical data, it's a virtual certainty that it will, because history rhymes with itself. And now here we are over a year and a half later, and we can see, yeah, it did. It absolutely did. It did keep running, because that's historically what makes sense. So when a new all-time is hit, history shows that as soon as that all-time high is hit, it actually runs for some period of time here. And I don't think that we're at the point here where we're imminently going to crater down. Yes, there will be a high, and yes, there's going to be a bear market in stocks and crypto at some point in the future. Of course, that's a no-brainer. But do we need to worry about that imminently happening? I certainly don't think so. That doesn't make sense. And based on historic precedent, the answer is certainly no. And then he says the Federal Reserve has signaled that they are going to cut rates, meaning looser monetary policy is on the way. Trump looks like he's really trying to dominate on the monetary front. The grass looks bright and green for crypto right now, and it feels like we are simply watering it before the next big growth. Yes, that is true, and that's a narrative, whether you think it matters or not. I'm not going to get into it for the purposes of this video. The market absolutely loves the narrative of rate cuts, and it is a virtual certainty that in September, yeah, we're actually going to go ahead and get that. So we'll see here. And then he talks about XRP here. And so he says here, I like this, he says, do I really need to keep banging my head against the wall repeating the same story about XRP? The last week has been incredible in terms of how bearish the crypto space has become on it, and to me, that tells us we are closer than ever to a move higher. And folks, and I've highlighted this recently, and it's hilarious to me. XRP hanging around $3, even close to that, and people are feeling distraught. It's just so funny, having been here since late 2017. It's the same sentiment, the same whining on the internet, the same impatience from adults, grown adults, who are just crying up a storm. It's the same thing that I saw when XRP was like 30 cents. And I remember several years ago, actually in 2020, summer 2020 going into fall, it was hovering around 20 cents for what felt like eternity. People just bitching up a storm, sentiment in the gutter, couldn't have been more sad. And then in 2020, before the lawsuit from the SEC hit, which obviously ruined things, it just rocketed out of nowhere. Inside of a very short time period, it like quadrupled in price. It went from like 20 cents or so, 25 cents, whatever it was, up to over 80 cents. And I can't remember if it was like a week in which that happened. It could have been a little less, a little more. But it happened, I think, in the beginning of November 2020. And then people stopped bitching. I'm telling you, it's the same thing here. We're just at a higher price level. And those people that were bitching, they would have been well served to just wait. And it's not our fault we had to wait extra long because of the SEC nonsense. But, here we are. We're better off for it, frankly. Not the SEC stuff, but because we hold XRP, which is one of the most successful cryptocurrencies in history, very obviously. But he says, now, I do not know exactly when that move will come. He certainly does believe it's coming, though. He says, honestly, I thought it would have already happened by now. But that does not change my conviction. I am not a predictor of time. I focus on structure and fundamentals, and those tell me XRP will surprise everyone. So far, we have not had any major announcements for XRP. Instead, Ripple has been laying the foundations, lending to crypto companies like Gemini, who went public last week, settling their lawsuits with the SEC, positioning themselves strategically with the US administration, and strengthening ties in Japan with SBI and RLUSD. And I'll pause and note, I highlighted all of these stories, and a lot of them highlight actual utility with XRP. And I've always believed, like my core thesis is that utility matters and will win the day. XRP oozes utility. It's so obvious to see why XRP is one of only 3 coins out of tens of thousands of coins in existence that has always been in the top 10 coins by market cap. It's only Bitcoin, Ethereum, and XRP that have always been in the top 10 coins by market cap for their entire existence. And for XRP, it's even more impressive, because it was attacked by the United States government, and it still didn't fall out of the top 10. That is amazing. That is an amazing fact. I'm still just in stunned amazement by that. It's just to see that with that kind of assault, it's just crazy. You love to see it. Anyway, and he says, when price action finally flips positive for XRP, sentiment will flip too. Folks, that's certainly true. I'm telling you, sentiment will flip positive. The same people who are bearish now will suddenly be bullish. But by then, price will already be moving, and it will be too late to add meaningfully to positions. That is why I think the short term here is crucial. Upside is closer than most believe. Ding, ding, ding. Spot on. I could not possibly agree more with him on that particular matter. Now, I'm already well positioned. Mind you, like, I'm not buying anything personally. I'm not telling you to buy or not buy. I don't care what you do. I don't know what's best for you. I'm just telling you that I personally do believe that for those who want to add to their crypto positions, we're nearing the end for that to be reasonable. And then if you don't do it now, I have a feeling you're going to look back and just wish that you had taken more action. I think that's a virtual certainty. That's always what happens in these situations, you know? And then as far as Bitcoin, which leads the market, this is interesting because he said something that at least a couple other analysts had mentioned, or at least he cites a key level here for Bitcoin that 2 other notable chart analysts had talked about, and that would be Credible Crypto and the blockchain backer. They both cited this level. So check this out. As far as Bitcoin, he says, I want to clarify straight away, nothing has changed with my stance here. A week or 2 ago, I highlighted this potential play, and the chart is playing out exactly as expected. We've got a substantial area of support/resistance around $105,000, and I still think that's where we could see a bounce. In fact, I'd almost expected, especially given how bearish sentiment feels on Twitter right now. Everyone's quick to throw around comparisons to the last cycle, saying this looks like the second peak before the bear market really kicked in. I don't buy that view. Not yet. For me, the structure doesn't match up. Okay. Now, there's only one chart analyst I follow that thinks that Bitcoin has topped this cycle. There's another chart analyst, the blockchain backer, who says if Bitcoin does drop below that level of $105,000, he will, at a minimum, entertain the idea that Bitcoin has actually peaked for the cycle. So he doesn't believe that now, to be clear. There's only one analyst I follow that does. That would be Casey Trades. So that's a minority opinion. Doesn't mean it's wrong necessarily, but it is a minority opinion. Usually minority opinions end up being correct, but not always. We're talking in terms of probabilities here. So the blockchain backer is warning that level. And even Credible Crypto, he talked about the $105,000, and he worded it in such a way where it's like he wouldn't even understand it if it happened. Like, it would be so far out of bounds, it would just be wildly unexpected. So it shouldn't happen. I wouldn't expect that to happen. If it does happen, I think you're going to see a lot of analysts rethinking about rethinking what's likely to happen for Bitcoin for the remainder of the cycle. But we're not seeing those signs right now. So I don't think it makes sense to worry about any of that, frankly. I think this is a time to be excited so far as I'm concerned. Number go up, my friends. Number go up. So anyway, you guys do whatever you want. I'm just letting you know that if history is to rhyme with itself, analysts like Crypto Insight UK are probably correct. And we're just going to blaze upward from here. So either you're positioned properly or you're not, but we're getting to the end where you could reasonably get stuff on the cheap. I'm not a financial advisor. You should not buy or sell anything because of anything I say or write. That would be a very, very, very bad idea. Until next time, to the moon, Lambo.